Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. Looks like Elise and Brittany are joining us. And we'll wait maybe a minute or two to let the other few members join in this afternoon. For those who don't know me, I am Chantel Hogan. I am the Native CDFI Network's new communications director. So happy to be joining you today. And we are excited to have Matt joining us from the Federal Trade Commission. Knowing our communications, Joni was supposed to be here with us as well, but we get the pleasure of having Matt's full attention.
Yeah, thanks so much. Should we just go ahead and get started at this point, or how would you like to move forward, Chantal?
Sure, if you'd like to go ahead and get started, and then I think that hopefully a few more will filter in, but this call is being recorded, so those who are members will have access to it on their membership portal.
Great, well, thanks so much, and thanks again for having me today. I am Matt Schultz. I'm a staff attorney at the FTC in the Midwest Regional Office. The Midwest Regional Office is one of 8 regional offices that the Federal Trade Commission has throughout the country, and the Midwest region goes from Kentucky all the way to the Dakotas. So just to get it out of the way, I am really happy to be with you all and to talk about the FTC and scams and frauds, but I just want to say at the beginning that I only speak for myself and I don't speak for the agency or any of the commissioners. Our plan for today, and hopefully it's a discussion or at least the beginning of a discussion, is to provide a little bit of an overview of the FTC, spotlight some common scams and other issues people are seeing, introduce some free resources that are available for distribution or for you to use. And then if there are any questions or if there's anything else that we, it would be good to discuss at the end, we can do that too. Like I said, I hope that this is the start of a conversation. And I know that my colleagues and myself would love to hear from anyone either on this call or who learns about it in the future or, is interested in learning more about these issues. So I'll provide some contact information at the end as well. So moving sort of along here, the FTC, very high level summary, just in case anyone isn't familiar with the agency. We're the nation's consumer protection agency. It's an agency of a little more, I think, around 1,000, but I think it's a little more than 1,000 staff. Our mission is to combat deceptive or unfair practices in the marketplace. And that sounds very broad, but really what I guess I would say it boils down to is to, make efforts through law enforcement and education, to combat unfair or deceptive practices. One of the ways we do that on the law enforcement side is we sue companies, often in federal court, and ask the court to stop the illegal conduct, and often ask the court to award restitution or redress for the consumers who were harmed by the practices. Last year, we were able to return around or over $472 million to consumers, and that was about 3.5 million people who got refunds in 2021. I'll talk about that in a little more detail in a minute. Along those lines, I do want to note that the FTC only has civil rather than criminal authority, so the FTC doesn't put fraudsters in jail. But we do work closely with the Department of Justice on criminal cases. And then on the outreach side, outreach is a big part of what we do here at the agency, including both consumer and business education. You can find lots of information about outreach at consumer.ftc.gov or consumer.gov. And I'll mention some great resources along the way as we go along and then at the end of the presentation. One other critical role the FTC serves is to collect reports about fraud. We maintain a database called Consumer Sentinel that collects consumer fraud and identity theft complaints from across the country. You can see on the slide a few sort of top line facts about 2021. The Consumer Sentinel database includes complaints that are submitted directly to us at the FTC, as well as complaints submitted to the Better Business Bureau and many state attorney general's offices around the country. The database is then sort of a one-stop shop for law enforcement and others, looking for information about fraud and sort of what's going on across the country. You can find information, public information about consumer complaints in what's called the data book. And the website is listed there that you can find links to the data book from. It's www.ftc.gov explore data. And if you go there, you can click through and find your state, or it breaks down the data in other ways, and you can kind of see what's happening in your area or in any particular sort of subject matter that might interest you. Along those lines, this is an example of what you can find in terms of data about the state of Illinois. That happens to be where I'm located, so I used it as an example. As you can see, in Illinois, identity theft was the #1 reported fraud by a wide margin, followed by imposter scams and online scams last year. We'll talk about those things a little more in a minute, but you can sort of see how the data is broken down, and if you're interested in sort of seeing information about other states or particular information about particular categories, you can do that at the website ftc.gov/explore data. That'll link to what's called Tableau Public, which collects and provides the information in the database. You can also find information about pandemic-related complaints, which I know people have been very interested in at the same location. This slide shows some statistics about refunds in 2021. As I mentioned, we were able to return over 472 million to around 3.5 million people. We're not always, unfortunately, able to get people their money back, but we of course try to do that whenever we can, and we're very happy when we do that. So you can also find more information about refunds at the same website. We recently launched a new website for reporting fraud, and you can see the website is listed there on the slide, reportfraud.ftc.gov. Reporting fraud is really important. One of the things that we continue to learn is that fraud impacts different communities differently, and different communities report fraud at different rates. The site reportfraud.ftc.gov hopefully makes it easier for people to share their experiences and help us at the FTC know what's going on out there in the world, so that we know how to best devote our resources. Along those lines, I wanted to cover a couple of common scams and issues that we have seen and continue to see, so that to the extent you see them, you can spot them and avoid them, or you can pass along the information to contacts and colleagues and other people. The first category I wanted to cover is imposter scams. You saw in the data that I just showed you that imposter scams are one of the most common fraud scams after identity theft last year, both nationally and in Illinois. Imposter scams have unfortunately been the #1 fraud that we've seen for several years now, and many imposter scams actually involve identity theft. The FTC got nearly 1 million reports of imposter scams in 2021, and that's about double what we saw in 2020. And unfortunately, reported losses associated with those scams were around $2.4 billion, also about double 2020. Unfortunately, I suspect most of you know, if not all of you know, what an imposter scam is, but just briefly, an imposter scam is where a fraudster pretends to be someone you know or trust in order to get your money, your personal information, or something else valuable. It might be pretending to be a person working for the government. It might be a person pretending to work for a large company that you're familiar with, like Microsoft or Amazon, a family friend, or someone that you met online that has shown a romantic interest or an interest in striking up a friendship. This slide covers some of the most common imposter scams that we see. As you can see, Social Security imposters, IRS imposters, and tech support imposters are very common. And we always want to warn people that, that those are sort of the not certainly the exclusive category, but a very common set of imposter scams to look out for. The most common of those is definitely government imposters. So, you know, people often ask how you can spot government imposter scams. One of the main ways is that government agencies will never contact you by phone, email, or text and ask you for money or information. They will always contact you by US mail letter first. So if you get a call out of the blue, or a text or an email from someone who claims to be from a government agency, it's almost certainly a fraud. You should also not trust your caller ID, as I think we are all familiar with at this point. You know, that can be manipulated. So even if it might say on your phone that the call is coming from a government agency or a particular company, that does not mean that it is. Another common imposter scam we're unfortunately seeing a lot is what's called, or what we refer to as, a grandparent scam. This starts with usually someone calling someone pretending to be a relative, often a grandchild. Sorry about that. I have sorry about that. There we go. I apologize. My light occasionally goes off because it's set on a motion detector. So I may have to do that again. Getting back to grandparent scams, you know, someone, often these scams, someone calls and says they're a grandchild or another distant relative and they need money for something or other. Maybe it's bail, maybe it's help to pay a bill, or help covering attorney's fees or something like that. They often ask for privacy and secrecy, and ask for the money right away. They claim urgency, which is common across all of these scams, really, that we're going to talk about today. And that's a red flag. If someone tells you they need money immediately, that should trigger a red flag in your brain. You know, to avoid scams like this, you know, getting back to the urgency point, we tell people that it's important to take a deep breath and try to resist the fear and pressure that the scammer is trying to impart on you, and get off the phone and talk to someone you trust about what you were told. And you know, sort of whatever you do, resist the urge to give out personal information or pay money right away. Another red flag that we always like to remind people of is that anyone who contacts you and asks to be paid for anything by gift card or wire transfer or cryptocurrency or something like that is often, very often, if not always, a scammer. So, if someone asks for payment by a method that is not credit card or check, if they ask for payment by credit card or check, that doesn't mean it's legitimate, but you can be pretty sure if they ask for payment by a gift card that it's a scam. Another common scam that we're seeing a lot these days is online shopping scams, where websites pop up claiming to have access to, early on in the pandemic, for example, it might be PPE or masks or things like that, and promising delivery quickly, and then people pay, provide their credit card information and get charged, and the stuff never shows up. The message here is be careful when you're shopping online, do your research, and to the extent that you're able, do search in your preferred search engine for any company that you might be considering making a purchase with before you do. See what reviews have to say, and try to get other examples of other people's experiences before you pay anything.
It's happened to me twice this year now.
Yeah,
I'm still waiting for my shoes.
I'm very sorry to hear that, but it is unfortunately not surprising. It's a very common problem, and we get a lot of complaints about it. So it's not just you. Another very common scam that we've seen pop up a lot during the pandemic, and I will say that I just got a phishing text message, I think last week or the week before, is text message schemes where people, the sender tries to get your personal information or get you to pay money by clicking on a link to a fake website. This slide shows an example of a fake email from the World Health Organization. We've also seen fake messages from companies like FedEx or UPS or Amazon, supposedly, asking to confirm a delivery or confirm a purchase. Like I said, I got one recently that I think we're seeing a lot of, or at least I've anecdotally heard, we've seen a lot of about a fake fraud alert on one of my accounts, saying that it had been hacked or compromised and asking me to click through. And what I did is what I would encourage anyone else to do if they get a text like this. If you're at all concerned that it might be legitimate, don't click through the text. Again, going back to the message from before, take a minute, take a deep breath, and open up a separate browser in maybe a separate machine if you can, but it doesn't necessarily have to be. But do what you would do under other circumstances to make sure that that particular account hasn't been compromised. Don't click through any links to try to check out an account or verify a purchase or anything like that. Another common scam, unfortunately, that we see is job scams. And this slide kind of walks through advice we like to give people when they're searching for a job to avoid these sorts of scams. The main thing to remember is that you should be very concerned if someone offers you the promise of a job or offers you help finding a job in exchange for money up front. I think we all are unfortunately familiar with robocalls. Unfortunately, like I said, these represent another common category of complaints that we see. And they sort of line up subject matter wise with the other scams that we've talked about already, particularly imposter scams. You might get a robocall claiming to be from a government agency. Again, if there is any concern that you have about whether those types of calls are legitimate, you can always search for information about how to contact that agency and do your research online and contact them directly separately. But generally speaking, government agencies will not contact you via robocall. Another category of types of complaints that I wanted to make sure to cover are debt and mortgage relief and credit repair scams. The FTC has brought lots of law enforcement actions related to bogus credit related services, and we've partnered with states to bring hundreds of additional lawsuits. About a decade ago or 2 decades ago, we amended the telemarketing sales rule to protect consumers who were seeking debt relief services. And that rule prohibits companies that sell debt relief services from over the phone from charging a fee before they actually settle or reduce a consumer's debt. It also prohibits debt relief providers from making misrepresentations and requires that they disclose key information that consumers need in evaluating the supposed debt relief services that they're pitching. Over the past few years, the FTC has filed around or over 35 cases against marketers of mortgage relief services. And we've also partnered with state law enforcement to bring several more, hundreds more lawsuits. And you can find more information about these debt and mortgage relief and credit repair issues at the website that's listed in the slide. And I would encourage you, if you're at all interested, to go to ftc.gov consumer finance and click around. There's lots of really useful, helpful information there on these sorts of scams and issues.
Matt, I have a question for you.
Yep.
With when people are purchasing a home and an institution offers a 30-year amortization with a 5-year or 10-year balloon, does the consumer protection or does your agency, does it perceive that as being a predatory loan?
Well, as I said at the beginning, I only speak for Matt and not for the FTC and for the commissioners. And, speaking personally, I don't know the answer to that question. If that's something that you'd like to talk about or get more information about, we can certainly follow up. If that's an issue that the sort of mortgage related consumer protection issues is something that you'd like to hear more about, I'm happy to follow up either directly or, put something together or talk to my colleagues who've worked on those issues directly.
Yeah, we're working with another federal agency, and we're in the finance business, and I know banks offer it all the time, and I just don't see how it could be perceived as a predatory loan. But anyway, yeah, maybe I'll follow up with you.
Yeah, feel free. I'm happy to go back and get you whatever information that I can on whatever issues come to mind, either now or after the presentation. So just let me know. As I'm sure some of you know, the FTC also enforces the FTCPA. And the FTCPA bars collectors from using obscene or profane language, threatening violence, calling consumers repeatedly, or at unreasonable hours, misrepresenting a consumer's legal rights, disclosing consumers' personal affairs to third parties, and obtaining information about a consumer through false pretenses. Again, there's a good amount of additional information on the FTC's website if you all are interested, or if anyone else is interested in the debt collection area. As I said at the beginning, and as we've talked about before, we're very interested in hearing from you all today about how we can help in the future, provide support and, work together to both support and protect Native American communities. And, so I wanted to highlight one recent case where the FTC was able to partner with the Navajo Nation Human Rights Commission, and the partnership was just so valuable. And I think that you can see from the slide a few high-level points about the case, but the Navajo Nation Human Rights Commission held some public hearings in 2012 for victims of predatory auto sales practices. You may be familiar with this case, but the result of the hearings was that there were a large number of complaints about dealerships, including Tate's Auto. The Navajo Nation Human Rights Commission forwarded that information to the FTC, and the FTC ended up filing suit against Tate's Auto for allegedly deceiving consumers and falsifying vehicle financing applications. The FTC alleged in the complaint that they falsified consumers' income and down payment on the applications. The FTC also alleged they lied about important financial terms in car ads, such as that they allegedly didn't tell people about limitations or restrictions that prevented people from qualifying for loans. As a result of the case, and the FTC, I think, is still in the process or has already started sending over $400,000 back to around 3,500 consumers. So, like I said, that partnership was really valuable. And it's just a great example of a case where working together really did protect consumers, and hopefully talking about the case gets the word out and sort of protects consumers in the future too. Moving on to another issue that's really important that I wanted to make sure that we cover today, identity theft. You all unfortunately probably know what that is, but this slide covers it at a very high level and I think provides a really nice summary. In very short, identity theft happens when someone, uses your social security number or other personal information to open a new account, to make purchases, to get a refund, to commit fraud. As I think we covered a little bit at the beginning, and this slide can sort of goes into a little bit more detail on identity theft was the #1 reported complaint to the FTC in 2021 with over 1.4 million reports. That nearly doubled from 2019 to 2020 and then remained pretty steady in 2021.
What was loan lease fraud? Loan of lease. What is that?
That is a really good question. I can get back to you on that. I'm
Okay.
not exactly sure what the contours of the loan of lease fraud identity theft category is. But I'm happy to get back to you on that.
Okay.
So identity theft, like I said, occurs when someone steals your personal information and uses it to commit fraud. This slide has some good examples of misuse and then the impact on victims. Like I said, a scammer might apply for a refund and steal the money. A scammer might open a variety of accounts in the person's name and run up the bill. And as we, I think, unfortunately all know, those sorts of things can have really devastating impacts on the people who suffer as a result of that conduct. And the slide kind of walks through just a sample of those consequences. Thieves can get your information in lots of different ways that seem very intuitive, like stealing your wallet or stealing your mail, or getting access to your credit card using like a skimmer, a machine that you would run it through without even knowing it, while you're conducting an otherwise legitimate transaction. The phishing emails or text messages or calls that I talked about earlier are another way that scammers can get your personal information, like the fraud alert where you click through and the scammer puts malware on your phone or mimics a website that looks like a website that you're familiar with, so that you then put in your personal information and they can take it that way. That's why we encourage people, not to follow links, and to, if you have a legitimate concern about, a contact from a company or a government agency, to sort of make your own contact, do your own research, and go about it as you ordinarily would. People spot identity theft in a range of different ways. They might find something strange on a credit card or bank statement. They might get bills for something that they didn't purchase. You might find an account that's not yours on your credit report. There's lots of different ways that unfortunately people can find out that they've their identity or their personal information has been stolen. We encourage people to check their credit reports regularly to see if that provides any information about whether they've their personal information has been stolen. And everyone is entitled to get a free credit report at annualcreditreport.com. I suspect some of you on this call are aware of that, but we still like to note that website. You can stagger your requests, which is something that some people don't necessarily know. So you can get a free credit report from each of the reporting agencies. And so, we encourage people who are interested to get one report and then from one of the agencies, and then wait a few months and then get another one from another of the agencies, and then wait a few months and get it from the third agency, because that, provides a sort of good picture over the course of the year. And you are entitled to a free report from each of the agencies. So if you do find out that unfortunately your identity or your personal information has been stolen, one thing we always encourage people to do is act fast. And the second thing, we encourage people to do is report. Report to local police and get a police report if you can. Report to your financial institutions and credit card companies. Keep an eye on your mail extra closely if you believe that your personal information has been stolen, just to make sure, like I said, that you don't see new accounts popping up that you don't remember creating or anything along those lines. We also encourage people to consider, things like credit freezes and fraud alerts, in situations where their personal information has been compromised. Identitytheft.gov is the main place that we want people to go to report ID theft. It's really a one-stop shop for people who would like to report and to get information about how to recover from identity theft. Once you report the situation, the website kind of walks you through step by step the ways that the steps that you should take to try to recover. It fills out sort of like, for example, form letters. So it's a really useful resource that we like to send people to, because, like I said, it kind of it moves you through the process pretty efficiently and provides a lot of really helpful information. Sorry about that. Like I said, the identitytheft.gov, on identitytheft.gov, you can find personal recovery plans, step-by-step advice, pre-filled forms and letters, chat and phone support, and there's also a Spanish language site if people would prefer that. Again, going back to a point that I made earlier, if you've been scammed, we like to tell people to act quickly and contact the payment provider immediately, tell them the transaction was fraudulent and ask for your money back, and then report the scam to us. So as we sort of wrap up today, I wanted to cover some FTC resources that that everyone should feel free to use and to access, and sort of cover lots of the different topics that I've talked about today in a lot more detail. One site that's really great is bulkorder.ftc.gov. It's really great because the information is really great and it's free. So, you can order bulk order resources that you can hand out. You can distribute the information. It's also public domain material. So, you can copy it and use it in your own publications. It's just a really great place where you can find different resources on all of the things we've talked about today, and a lot more, sort of really important topics. To help address fraud involving older adults, the FTC developed the Pass It On campaign. It encourages older adults to talk with each other about scams. The idea is that by talking about scams, they'll be better able to recognize scammers, and it will remove some of the stigma associated with scams, which I think is very common and unfortunately we all face. And the more that we can encourage people to talk, the sort of more people will, the less the stigma will hopefully affect people, and the more people will talk about what's happening and prevent further scams. It's been a really successful campaign, and it's like a turnkey operation. So anyone can go into a community center, senior center with a ready-made sort of program and set of materials to help get older adults talking about things like charity fraud, online dating scams, IRS imposters, and lots more. You can find out more about it at the address that's there on the slide, www.ftc.gov, Pass It On. We also like to encourage people to sign up for alerts and encourage all of their contacts to do that as well. I saw a consumer alert recently about how to save money on utilities and avoid scams. I saw another one about avoiding student loan scammers. They really cover a wide range of subject matter, and they're I think really useful for just sort of staying informed about consumer issues that are sort of front of mind for everyone. And then just very briefly, you can connect with us at FTC on Twitter, and also there's links there, or addresses for other spots where you can find really good information. I will personally say that the YouTube videos are really good, and really good to review and really good to use. I think they're really effective. So if you're looking for things to kind of break up a presentation or supplement a presentation, there are some really good videos on about consumer issues on the FTC Videos YouTube channel. All right, so I've talked a lot, and hopefully provided a sort of high level overview of the information that's available at consumer.ftc.gov, and covered some common scams. I really, again, want to reiterate that I appreciate the opportunity to talk today to all of you, and to keep the conversation going. And I'm happy to stick around if anyone has any other questions. I know, Pete, you had a couple of questions that maybe we can follow up on at some point in the near future. But if there are other questions, or if anyone has any ideas about FTC outreach generally, or in the Native American community specifically, I'd be very interested in hearing from people on that.
Yeah, I will connect you with a couple different Native organizations who I think may deal with a lot of Native tribal and citizen issues. So what I'll do is, I don't know, have you reached out to the National Congress of American Indians?
It's very possible. Again, speaking only for myself, I don't know as I sit here right now, but I would absolutely encourage you and welcome any sort of contacts that you would suggest. We look into. So
Okay.
whether or not there's been any contact in the past, if you have any ideas about further outreach, please, send them along.
Okay.
Matt, I have a couple questions for you related to trends in some of these scams. Do you notice, two questions? So one, do you notice any trends geographically? Like are some issues more common in certain parts of the country? And then my second question is sort of seasonality. So do you notice like certain times of the year, these things tend to pop up more and they should kind of be on our radar?
Yeah, so sort of going in reverse order. In terms of seasonality, one thing that I mentioned earlier on about online shopping scams is that they sort of proliferated, unfortunately, during the pandemic when people were doing a lot more shopping online. And so you can imagine that I don't have the data at my fingertips, so I don't want to tell you that this is absolutely true, but I guess I would be surprised if we sort of didn't see an uptick in online shopping related scams, sort of either when it's colder outside and people are less likely to be doing shopping in person, or around holidays when they're doing more shopping generally. So I do think that I would personally be very surprised if there wasn't some correlation between those types of things and the scams that we're seeing. And certainly, in terms of using online shopping scams as an example, we certainly encourage people when they're doing more on online shopping to pay more attention to things like that. And then in terms of the geographical differences, again, I don't have the data at my fingertips, so I don't want to misstate anything, but what I would really encourage you to do, and this isn't a direct answer to your question, but I think it's a better answer to your question, in that it will give you the facts immediately and in a very user-friendly way, is if you're interested in something like that, go to ftc.gov/explore data. And I've done it myself. Just sort of click around the map and look at the different states, and you will see the sort of common frauds and scams that are the top line, or the number one or number two identity theft and imposter scams. I suspect will be one or two, most, if not all, of the places you click around, but you'll see kind of how the other scams reshuffle. So I suspect that the answer to your question very much is yes, that certain areas experience different frauds at different rates. And that's part of why we really encourage the reporting, is because that allows people to kind of digest that data at a high level and do that work in sort of more than just an anecdotal clicking around way, and decide, sort of where to devote the resources and what issues may be percolating in one area of the country or in a particular state that aren't elsewhere, and try to get to the bottom of why.
I figured out that loan lease deal. It's when you lease a vehicle and they don't put a residual resale value into it, they can charge you whatever they want. So you run up the miles on your lease, and if it's not clearly stated in your lease that's what the residual value is, then they can charge you whatever you want, and that's where they scam you.
Well, you can feel free to add that still to your list.
Okay.
But thank you very much for looking into it. That's really fascinating. If anyone else has any questions, sort of in the future, or something occurs to people later, I really want to reiterate that a lot of people put contact information on slides and in presentations as just a matter of course, but that is my phone number here at the FTC, and my direct email address, so that goes directly to me. And I would very much encourage anyone who is interested in reaching out in the future with other questions or ideas about outreach to do that.
Thank you so much, Matt.
Thank you.
This will be on our website. So if you want to rewatch or have additional questions, feel free to reach out to either NCN or Matt. We'd be happy to help, but thank you for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks, Matt.
Take care.